Good evening, Manchester. And it's lovely to be here and to echo everything that Ben and Jamie's just said. I feel it's also very important to collaborate, and much of what I'm going to show you this evening about the work that I do and the design trends that I've encountered through that work has been as a direct result of collaboration. So hopefully, you know, this networking event will result in more of that in the future. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background about me and what I do. As Jamie said, many of you may have seen me on the BBC Starck Design for Life programme, which aired about 2 years ago now. I was extremely lucky to have that opportunity. It provides me with a fantastic platform. I found it extremely difficult to get into the creative industries. I graduated back in 2003, and there was literally no work around at all. I lacked some of the skills that I thought that I might have needed, and since realised later. And it's only at this stage in my life now and through some of the opportunities that I've been able to have, some of the direct commercial opportunities, that I'm actually able to put my creativity into practice. So in order to manage all the opportunities out there, I've had to set up 3 separate brands. And this has been in the last 2.5, 3 years. When I first came back from my Paris experience, I set up a consultancy under my own name, and because I was an educator mainly in high schools teaching design technology in the past, most of that consultancy was based around education. Obviously, I felt I was highly creative and had more to offer on a commercial level, but I lacked the experience. So through working with education practices and organisations, I was able to build upon that, and I still operate under my own name today, working for some quite large organisations. Recent example was Sony, did some consultancy for them. Obviously, I've done a few lectures for BoConcept, and also some commissions. But my real passion and the thing that I'm really keen to see go forward as my career develops is the Rethink Things products that I try to bring to market independently. And I find that there's a lot of young designers, students, graduates, I'm sure you're all the same yourself, with fantastic ideas that just never make it to market. And I'm determined to see some of mine through if it kills me. So that's what Rethink Things is all about. And I've recently expanded that to offer licensing opportunities to some of these graduates. So rather than compromising their ideas too much to make them highly commercial, we assist them to retain some of that integrity in the creative process, but still make it viable. In order to make that work, I had to set up a third organisation which offers creatives a platform on which to test their ideas. So under the 5ml Design Collective, myself and my 2 partners go to different trade shows around the UK, and more recently we've been entering the European market. And we take some of the prototypes and the products that have been developed that are highly creative to try and get some feedback and to see whether it's going to be viable in the marketplace. If it is and there's a demand, Rethink Things then offers the designer the opportunity to license in. So that's a bit of background, some images to accompany. This is the breadth of the work that I do under my own name. These are some of the products that I've developed over the last few years. They're all, I describe them as quirky products. To look at, the question I often get asked straight away is, what is it? I've done quite a lot of marketing actually with just question marks next to the product, and I kind of like the idea that people don't understand what it is straight away. Many people say good design is intuitive, and I do believe that to an extent, but also I think that there's much more scope to push the boundaries that have grown over the last, however many decades, to create a new language for products, which is what I'm trying to do with these. And many of them have a socially responsible or an ecological focus. The lamp that you can see there, the green one, that actually provides light without energy usage, without electrical consumption. The light on the far end, which looks like a big ball, that's all made from waste, from an engineering process using a lathe. This one here is about creating a seat that can be used outdoors, which is the simplest form that it can possibly be without excess components. It's a monocoque, so it's one material, it's one process, and you can adjust the height and the angle for different users by how you insert it into the ground outdoors. So all of these products do have a sort of ecological or socially responsible focus, and this is the one that some of you may recognise off the TV. I'm still battling with that. I think it's going to be about another 3 years before I finally make it to market. These are examples of some of the products that we take through the 5ml Design Collective. And the reason I wanted to highlight some of these to you was to point out a sort of feel, if you like, for the kinds of things that are starting to emerge from the graduates that we take under our wing. I believe very strongly that what is referred to as trends, sort of bashed around the marketplace, is actually so much more than that. Trends are picked up from the creative minds who develop them and kind of generically branded as something that's quite different sometimes to what was intended in the creative process. Oops. So to talk to you about trends, I wanted to explore a little bit why we do have trends. A very simple definition: a trend is like something that's in, something that everyone's doing. That's obviously quite shallow and a bit passé. I think it's important that we understand why these trends occur and how it's relevant to the time and the culture and the economic conditions that we're living in. So what I want to explore through some of these forthcoming slides is who's actually starting the trends. I believe designers and the creative thinkers start all of them. But what they are based upon and which ones are culturally and economically relevant at the moment. So the first one I'm going to pick up upon, I've branded New Modernism. This sort of aesthetic is very clean, very simplistic, sleek, powerful in colour. You'll see lots and lots of powder-coated steel, laminated surfaces, and the cuts are often very smart. So you can see, like, for example, with this chair, it's made out of one sheet of material, but it creates such a solid structure and such a functional object from something so simplistic. The same here with the bag. It's just cut out of one sheet, and you can fold it back to create a functional form. There's lots and lots of this around at the moment, and I believe strongly that this is all due to cost. Designers desperately trying to make things commercially viable but still retain some of that creativity. So there seems to be a lot of this around at the moment. It's not a criticism. I think actually it's really practical and really functional, because not only is it more affordable for people, it's more environmentally friendly because it's using less material and fewer processes. One thing I have found with these is that these strong sort of vibrant colours are coming through, and I think that's a case of designers compensating for the simplicity of the object, trying to give it more impact. The next sort of trend that I wanted to touch upon was honesty. And I've just chosen examples of lighting to describe what I mean by this. The idea that something can be stripped back to its barest and simplest form and still be regarded as aesthetically pleasing or have some kind of aesthetic quality. Designers are now starting to celebrate things, and they have done for quite some time actually, celebrate things that are quite industrial and even start to play around with the basics of how the object is constructed in a functional way. One of the designers that we represent at the moment, DIY Kyoto is the name of the company. They've developed this light bulb at the far right of the frame there, and it's the classic energy-saving bulb, but they've just played around with the forms that can be created, so that rather than having to have a lampshade to cover an ugly bulb, you can just celebrate the use of the bulb itself. Obviously quite technically difficult, but in concept it makes perfect sense to me. The next thing I picked up on coming out quite often is accents. When I say accents, I mean taking something that's quite plain or even quite natural or quite simple to construct as an object and giving it just a touch of colour or a simple cut that makes it quite strong visually. And you'll find it in textiles, creating sort of a surface relief. There's been a lot of gloss finishes just in subtle areas on more natural materials. And also these coloured leads, and I'm going to touch on those again later, but you've probably seen loads of those around lately. Just a very simple way of making something that's striking, again, so it's affordable for people. Nobody's got really the money, at, the way things are at the moment, to be splashing out on things that don't really have an impact, not only on the aesthetic and the room, but how they feel and what it says about who they are. Again, talking about surface relief, not only in textiles, but you've seen a lot of folding, as I touched upon before. These two at the top were seen at New Designers last summer. Just very, very simple again, trying to look at geometric construction and lines and how you can create a three-dimensional object from the folding of the material chosen. And again, it's a very simple, affordable way to create something that's quite unusual and quite unique. This is something that I personally believe in a lot. And I've picked out here an example of something that I've been developing myself over the last few years. And also this one here was developed by a student at Salford University who graduated last summer. And I've termed this greening. And for me, this means about creating a kind of emotional bond between the object and the user, whether that's through the way that it's used or the behavior in how it's used. So the top object that you see there is a Velcro bag, and the entire thing is made out of Velcro. And I originally received this as a commission for Liverpool Biennial, just to develop something with, my brief was one word, touched. And I wanted to explore materials through that. And I started to think about how you could have something that you can completely customize, but make it in a way that you'll never tire of it and it suits every occasion. And the concept with this bag is that you have the soft Velcro making up the bulk of the bag itself, and then you have the hook side, which is what I've termed grip strips. So you can reimagine the bag in lots of different ways. So it can be used as evening wear, it can be used in different contexts, it can be used for storage. And I've called this the Omniform. Obviously, that suggests that you can do whatever you like with it. And I've actually found that the market that's picked up on it is in a uniform context, so it's got quite a nice irony about it. But what I was intending here was to make something that people would use and keep for a long time. And I think that can be achieved also in a more subtle way. This product here is more than what it just looks. It's not just a plant in a teacup. The actual product is something that looks like a packet of tea. And you take it apart and it has a small, what looks like a tea bag, but it's actually dried soil. And then she's done the seeds as sugar cubes. And it comes with a little shovel, which is like a teaspoon. So you learn to grow your own plants and to care for them in a simple way, like making a cup of tea. And we're going to develop that together to actually assist people to grow their own tea plants indoors so they can become more self-sustainable. This term upcycling, I've heard this mentioned in lots and lots of different contexts. One of them was that people are starting to take things from the likes of IKEA where they can buy them really cheaply and then customize them and making them something more special, something that people will value more. I think that over the last few years, a lot of designers have been doing bog standard sort of ironic statements and obvious things. I'm sure you've all seen record bowls. There's hundreds of them everywhere. And there seems to be a little bit of rebellion against this now. People saying, well, if we're designers, what exactly are we? We're thinkers. What are we trying to achieve here? Are we just trying to get our names out there? Are we trying to be celebrities? Or are we actually trying to achieve something on a kind of academic questioning level? And I think people are starting now to go back to looking at craft, but making it more, not necessarily making it more viable in terms of cost, but making people understand it and value it more. So I think there'll be less of the record bowls and more of the technicalities in some of the traditional craft processes, but brought up to date with current technologies. Castings. This is something that really interests me because I found that you can create quite interesting forms in a very quick way, and you can do it in endless materials. And I've noticed quite a lot of these around lately. I mean, I like at the top here you have the irony and the humorous touch of recasting the paper bag in ceramic, and you still see examples of that around. I've photographed that in London during the design festival last September. And just underneath there, you've got castings in what appears to be some kind of plastic or glass. When you touch it, it's silicone and it moves. I'm not entirely sure what the function of that is, but just the exploration and the experimentation is something that I feel is still quite valuable in pushing boundaries. So it's nice to see that designers are still trying to do different things, even with something simple as casting. At the bottom here, you'll see these very intricate forms that almost look as though they've been pieced together by parts of Lego. And what the designers had done here was try to play with a thin slip cast, but in doing so, they created a huge machine or jig, and there was individual pieces of chalk, like what you'd see in a school. And it was almost like, you know, one of those pin things that you put on your face and it leaves the cast of your face. And they've been pushing the chalks in from different angles to create these really striking, unusual forms. And it's just something that you would never think of. And the technicality that had gone into the production of that was quite immense. But it gives such a great after effect. And I think it's important that we continually question what an object should be, and how we can achieve something new. And collaboration, I feel, is one way to certainly go about that. Slow fashion. This is an interesting one. I'm not quite sure actually what fashion is. In fact, one of the designers that I most respect, Ross Lovegrove, has recently come out and said that he doesn't even know what design is anymore. We often think about it as something that's highly functional, but obviously it's so much more than that, because otherwise we'd be living in a machine world. There's always an aesthetic quality, and that's not always a visual quality. Sometimes it's more emotive. Sometimes it relates to the material itself, something natural like these examples that you see here. And people are going back to that sort of tactility and other areas of aesthetic appreciation that differ from the purely visual. This is one that is something I really want to explore more in the future. Digital craft, and I've heard that word bandied about quite a lot recently, but I think it's a real area for focus, especially with universities having the facilities that they've got now available for students. More and more now there's new software available that can achieve much more organic forms. When I first learned how to use CAD, I was using a really rigid program where you could literally only make boxes and balls and stick them together. And it was more limiting than it was liberating. And I've recently come across new software that allows you to draw in vectors and allows you to create surfaces between these vectors in